Hi team, Coach Alexa here. It is London Marathon week. I've been having conversations with some of my one-to-one runners who are running, and also, of course, this amazing charity team that I work with. And I guess things are reaching a little bit of a fever pitch, aren't they, in terms of our brain gremlins starting to come up with stuff, a little bit of paranoia, some crazy dreams about weird and wonderful stuff that might go awry in the race. So I thought I'd talk a little bit in a short video today about stuff that you can do to kind of keep the brain in check. You've done the training now. No matter how that has gone, you are as prepared as you are going to be at this stage for this Sunday. And you know, the body is always capable of more than the brain thinks it is going to be. So there are two little sort of stories, pieces of information that I'm going to share in today's video, hopefully to help you this week and on Sunday as well, if you are running London, or in fact any marathon. Just sort of change the week that you listen to it to. So the first one is that our brains hold us back, and they do that for safety and survival. So a lot of the kind of wiring in our brain has not changed for millennia, but our culture's changed quite a lot, right? It's, you know, why we default to not wanting to go out and do training. It's why we default to eating a bit more cake, because our brain still has that wiring of better eat the calories while you've got them because there might not be any food around tomorrow, or better not just kind of burn calories for no reason because we might have to run away from lions tomorrow. And that sort of the strength, I guess, that is hiding all of that, a slightly annoying old school brain wiring, is that our brain is always trying to encourage us to do less. So come race day, it's why endurance events are often kind of thought of in chunks. There's the bit that you run with your legs, the bit that you run with your heart, and then the bit that you run with your brain in a marathon. And that's because when we get into the second half or towards the latter stages of our marathon, our brain will be going, Really? I really think we should slow down now. And they might not think that out loud. They might try and persuade you in different ways by making things ache a little bit more or making you feel tired. Probably should stop now. Probably should slow down now. But do bear in mind, unless you have picked up a real and noticeable injury during the marathon, that is your brain trying to persuade you out of it. It doesn't know that you're not going to have to go out and run the same distance again tomorrow, next week, or you're not going to have to go out and forage food or save the life of a family member in some sort of, you know, lion-based disaster tomorrow. It is trying to help you save energy, save effort for later in the day, in the week, or the following day. So, you know, using the brain to our advantage towards the end of a marathon can be really, really useful. And London, I think, is the best race for this because the camaraderie amongst the runners and support you'll get out on the course is second to none. But there are a few other little things that I'll talk next about that you can use this week when it comes to all of those, you know, thoughts that are buzzing around our heads, and during the race, just to keep settled, keep focused, and let the brain be a kind of key player in how you perform and feel in that marathon, as opposed to something that's trying to sort of lead you off path slightly. So a few years ago, I read a book called The Chimp Paradox. Probably a bit late in the day for book recommendations for London, but the basic premise of this book is that our brain has, at a very high level, simplified structure, three kind of levels of functioning. One is the autopilot, stuff that it's just doing in the background without us even noticing, digesting things, breathing, you know, pumping our heart, sorting out our immune system. And also we can put stuff into autopilot. Like, I don't need to think about and motivate myself and remind myself to clean my teeth every morning and evening. I just do it because I've done it twice a day, every day for rather too many decades. The next part of the brain in this book, they call it the chimp. So this is the bit of us that can get emotional, that maybe gets angry or gets upset or gets anxious about things and worries about all sorts of stuff. It's the reactive bit, and this is the bit that's trying to look after us. It gets angry because it feels threatened. It gets upset because something set it off, and it reacts quite quickly. It's that gut reaction that we get about situations sometimes. And it does a lot of useful stuff for us, but it's that very reactive, almost kind of animalistic side of us that's still there. And that's why in this book it's called the chimp. And then the other is called the professor brain, but I just like calling it the human brain because it's how we like to think we are most of the time, which is we maybe take time, we think about things, we carefully consider stuff, we have empathy for ourselves and others, we take into account, the complexities of the society that we live in. We act in a bit more sort of a less gut reaction, immediate reaction, but in a more of a think first, then act kind of way. So using this model, it's primarily the chimp that is having a little bit of a this week. And so it's about coming up with strategies for how to manage that part of our brain. Now, I think chimp is a good word for it. There are a couple of other ways I use of describing this part of our brain that's having a bit of a at the moment, in a toddler and sometimes in a teenager. So just because I don't think we want to sort of berate our chimp. It's doing a good job and it's doing its job and it's doing it, as far as it's concerned, for good reasons. But as the sort of adult human part of our brain, we can pause, take a step back and do things that can help care for and manage that chimp, toddler, teenager behaviour. So a few things to think about. This week, if your chimp is starting to come up with all sorts of worries, panics, phantom knee pain, dreams about forgetting your running shoes, all that sort of stuff, write things down. Every time your chimp comes up with something weird and wonderful and odd, write it down or put it in a little voice note, write it down on a bit of paper later. And then you can start to categorise things. Are these, frankly, ridiculous worries with the benefit of a little bit of time and space to read it back and go, that's a bit silly? Or are they maybe things that you could do something about? So, you're worried about forgetting your running shoes. Why not start laying your kit out now? So it's all ready to go and you've got it all in one place. So it's either sort of taking practical actions to show this chimp or in a toddler and a teenager that you are listening to it and you are doing things about this. And it might be some practical, helpful suggestions, or to just allay their fears, to talk that toddler down and go, you know what, thanks for telling me that. I really appreciate you raising that you were frightened or upset or worried about that. But actually, I've had a look at it. It's okay. Don't need to stress. And you can have this sort of, inner conversation with yourself during the race as well. That inner toddler, that chimp, that teenager, whatever you want to call it, will maybe start, tapping on your shoulder or having a little bit of a paddy or a tantrum, in the latter stages of the race usually, or sometimes earlier. And again, it can be useful to try to just take a breath, give it a minute and say to it, I hear what you're saying, but actually, this is a really important day for me. Actually, we've done all of the training and I'm, physically, I think we're in a good place today. Or actually, you know what, I know you're feeling, annoyed and upset and like you can't do it now, but let's just keep going for another half a mile, shall we? Let's take on an energy gel, have a sip of water, let's make sure you're nice and relaxed, and let's see how we feel in a few minutes. Little bit of a kind of bargaining. Talking to it with care and positivity, like you would if you were running with a friend and they were going through a little bit of a rough patch. So we tend not to be very good at doing that to ourselves, do we? So using that tactic of having that, you always can tap into that kind of grown-up adult human brain to go, it's all right, calm down a little bit. What can we do now in this moment to help us feel better later? What can we do at the moment to keep ourselves calm? And one thing to finish on is that you will always have more physically available, as I say, unless there's some sort of catastrophic injury that crops up from something incredibly dramatic during the marathon. If, for example, at the halfway point, you got a phone call to say a family member was 13.1 miles away and something dreadful had happened and you needed to get to them as quickly as possible, and the only option was to run there, you'd do it. You'd absolutely do it. So it is all in the brain's framing. You know, whether when we're sort of talking ourselves out of things and telling ourselves that we can't do stuff towards the end, that is the framing of the way the brain is trying to get you to just stop because it doesn't like it. Doesn't mean that the body actually is incapable of doing it. In fact, as I say, 99.9% of the cases, it's not, and you can. So enjoy it. Be kind to that inner toddler, inner chimp. Look after it, coach it, talk nicely to it this week. Listen to it, but don't pander to it too much. Have a wonderful time running the London Marathon this weekend. It is the best marathon in the world. I'm not biased at all. And I can't wait to hear how everyone gets on. Happy running.